Welcome back. You're watching the Global Dialogue. We're talking about Snapchat and its future in India with Evan Spiegel, the co-founder. You've seen some fairly calamitous ups and downs as far as your stock is concerned. How do you deal with that? What's the coping mechanism? What do you tell your team, on a day when you see the stock crash particularly? And also to other founders, and we're seeing now in India a whole host of startups that have listed and are going through this kind of volatility themselves. What's your take on dealing with this volatility?
I think what's so important is that the team stay focused on what really matters, and that for us is our community. So to be able to grow the business to more than 850 million people using our service all around the world, and to see them engage across all of our products, chatting with their friends or watching content using augmented reality, those are the sorts of input metrics that really matter. And that's what's enabled us to build products that serve advertisers and their goals and to really help them drive business impact. So I think as long as the team stays focused on what really matters over the long term, the stock price should take care of itself.
No, but for you personally, I mean, you created headlines as one of the youngest billionaires in the world and so on and so forth. And when you then see your personal market cap, so to speak, fall, how do you deal with that? I mean, or do you now look at success and performance differently, having gone through this?
Oh, I think I've always just evaluated my own contributions to the world in terms of building services that people really love. And that's what matters to me. That's what's enriching to me, of course, in addition to my relationships with my friends and, of course, my family. But I think for me, just to be able to have this opportunity to build a business like Snap and to be able to innovate, that's what gets me up in the morning and gets me really excited.
Well, some of the risks that you probably are going to have to deal with, not just here in India but globally as well, and I think tech platforms are grappling with what is to come. I mean, we've just seen what Australia has proposed to do with the legislation to ban social media effectively for those under 16. You have parental consent, of course, in the US for under 13, and countries like France, etc., are also talking about making things a lot harder for children to be able to access social media companies. What does that mean for the future for companies like yours?
I think it means we need to be really clear about how different Snapchat is. And that's been supported by the data and independent research just out this year, actually from Australia, that showed that Snapchat does not have the negative mental health impacts that other platforms like TikTok and Instagram do. And so I think, in the lead up to some of the decision making that happened in Australia, there was quite a lot of focus on research about how these platforms actually work and how they're different. And Snapchat yet again distinguished itself as a platform that makes a positive impact. There was also research out recently in the Netherlands that showed Snapchat's positive impact on well-being and people's relationships.
What are you doing differently?
Well, I think some of the early principles on Snapchat, like the focus on close friends and family, people adding each other to communicate, our content moderation, for example, and our content guidelines, I think, have made sure that we minimize the effects of harmful content or disinformation. We don't have a public friends list, for example, so it's much harder for people to discover who your friends might be and harass you by contacting your friends. And so I think the private nature of Snapchat as a service, the content moderation that we undertake in terms of our content platform, and of course the tools that we provide to help people communicate with their friends and family, those really contribute to a positive experience. And we see in the research that your relationships with your friends are actually some of the most important predictors of positive mental health outcomes. And so I think we need to continue to make the case for the positive impact that technology can play, and of course continue to differentiate ourselves from services that do have a measurable negative mental health impact. And as a result, I understand why folks are concerned about those services, but we want to make sure they don't lump us in because Snapchat
but
is
isn't
different.
that a fear that you will be lumped in, even though the research may show otherwise? Because, I mean, it's going to be hard for regulators as well as for governments and policymakers to kind of silo this or do carve-outs specifically for some and not for others.
I certainly think that's a concern, but we're here for the long term, and I think we need to continue to build products that make people's lives better. And, I think some of the things like the independent research that's come out recently really validate that approach. So, we're strong proponents of thoughtful regulation here, and as we look over the long term, I think people will continue to understand the different role that Snapchat plays in people's lives.
Well, speaking of regulation, and, again, something that, a debate that the communications minister has started here in India, and again, we're seeing global examples of this play out, Australia in specific, where they're saying that, look, social media platforms or technology platforms must share revenue with traditional broadcasters or traditional content generators. Your take on that?
Well, we were leaders there because we've been sharing revenue with content creators since we launched the Discover content platform. And so I do think that it's really important that creators are able to share in the success of the content that they create, and whether they're large publishers or creators that are just getting started, we revenue share with our content partners. I believe last year, or maybe this year, we paid out close to $500 million to content creators. And so that is a really important part of how we think about growing our business, because it's something we want to do together with content creators.
So what do you see as the key risks today to business? And I'll ask you this in the context of your opening statement of being squeezed between Meta and Google. And we haven't even talked about TikTok yet. And of course, 2025 could be a seminal moment for TikTok. Whether it ceases to exist in its current avatar in the US or not, we don't know. But what, do you see that as an opportunity for yourself?
I think for us, we need to stay focused on what really matters to our community, which is connecting with their close friends and family. And I think that's why people love Snapchat, and we see over and over again the way that we can play a positive role in supporting people's relationships with one another. So while there's always going to be competition and folks innovating, as long as we stay true to our core and the value we provide in people's lives, I think that's going to be the key to growing our business.
And staying independent is key to you as well?
I think it's certainly
they have come calling, and repeatedly so, but not willing to take the offer?
Well, I think it's been really important to maintaining our vision. As I mentioned, things like our focus on privacy, our focus on content moderation, creating a positive experience on Snapchat. Those are things that are really different than what the industry has been doing. And so I think for us, we were always concerned that if we sold our business, for example, we'd have to compromise on that vision and compromise on a product that we know makes a positive impact in people's lives in terms of their well-being and their relationships. And that's just not something we want to compromise on.
Are they still calling?
Well, I can't talk about that publicly, but I think what we have shared is our commitment to our long-term vision and to building a product that people really love and makes a positive impact in their lives.
Well, Evan, let me ask you this. As you look at the landscape today, and we're talking about the era of AI, now everybody wants to be an AI-led or an AI-powered company. How do you see that changing the positioning of companies like yours? How do you see that also perhaps further diversifying revenue streams, which is a large part of what you're focused on today?
AI has always played a really important role on our platform. First, in terms of our recommendation systems, for example, in terms of the content that we recommend, of course, the augmented reality experiences we recommend. But increasingly, we do see new opportunities in generative AI, and we've really wanted to embrace those, whether it's like the chatbot I mentioned or some of the new augmented reality experiences that are powered by generative AI that you couldn't accomplish with just a normal lens. So I do think generative AI is going to create all sorts of incredible opportunities, and I think we're well positioned to continue to invest there.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in the US at this point in time. And I remember you did a podcast for the BBC, or you curated one in 2021, I think, and it was about the ideas to reconstruct America. And let me ask you this in the context of what we're seeing happen now with Donald Trump heading back to the White House, and Elon Musk playing the kind of role that he is playing as far as policy making is concerned. How do you see this? Do you believe that this is going to be a transformative period for America specifically, and what happens in America impacts the rest of the world? How are you reading the changes today?
Yeah, I've always been so interested in America's progress and some of the big ideas that have come out in American history. Because we're a democracy, we're not sort of centrally planned, but that doesn't mean that there aren't sort of big animating ideas in American history. Whether that was FDR, for example, or Reagan, they both had big ideas that really sort of changed the trajectory of America for decades that followed their presidencies. And so I think it's too early to say whether we're in one of those periods again right now, but I do think there is a hunger in the United States for a new vision, for a new big idea for what the future could look like. And I think one of the reasons why it's interesting you mentioned Elon Musk is one of the things America has done really well over the past 250 or so years is innovate. And I think if you look back to the period of time before America was founded, life expectancy was half what it was today. GDP per capita had stagnated for thousands of years. And I think the innovation that has come out of the United States has played a really important role globally. And so I do think it's important that that continues, that we continue this incredible arc of progress that the United States has been a part of, but also countries around the world have participated in, that I think has really been driven by democratic ideals and the idea that great ideas can come from anywhere. And we should really support entrepreneurship and innovation to drive productivity.
Well, as you pointed out, America continues to be at the forefront as far as innovation is concerned, as well as entrepreneurship. I mean, all the large tech platforms that we're talking about here are based in the US. What more do you think needs to be done to revive capitalism for what capitalism was known as, which was creative destruction. And do you believe that, you know, Musk and this efficiency commission and, you know, all of that is going to be able to cut the bureaucratic red tape and really allow more innovation and entrepreneurship to flourish?
Yeah, it's too early to predict, I think, what the outcome will be there. But I think Elon does have a real track record of innovating. And if he can bring that innovative mindset to the American government, I think that that could be really valuable. And certainly there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's, you know, in rethinking education, for example. Our education system was developed about 100 years ago really for factory jobs, right, to prepare people for factory work. We haven't thought a lot about what it looks like, you know, today in the modern economy to need to work together on a team, to come up with creative ideas, and how can we sort of remap the education system to support the things that are most valued in today's workplace. I think healthcare is another great opportunity where we saw some leaps forward, certainly coming out of the pandemic and things like telehealth, but there's so much opportunity to, I think, drive more, you know, efficiency in healthcare, but also deliver better health outcomes. So there's so much opportunity to make a positive impact, and, you know, hopefully Elon will be hard at work on those opportunities.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this script plays itself out. But let's go back to talking about Snap, and I want to get you know, to understand your lessons from the listing experience and what that's taught you, and what you would like to share with Indian entrepreneurs who are looking at a potential listing at that point in time. At this point in time, I mean, the process, the journey to listing, and then the learnings post listing to deal with the volatility, to deal with the scrutiny. What's that been like for you?
I think that sort of pressure is really healthy for the business as long as you're committed to keeping an eye on the long term and communicating transparently with investors about what that journey looks like. And we've always shared our focus on augmented reality, our belief in our AR glasses, and we wanted to go on that journey with investors. But I think it's easier said than done to talk about the long term, but to actually live the long term commitment is I think a challenge. And I'm sure there's so much incredible entrepreneurial energy here in India, and I think just, you know, making sure that folks don't get too focused on the quarter to quarter and instead think about the long-term impact that they can create in the world. It's just critically important.
So let me end by asking you about India. You've got a great team here that you put in place with Pulkit, and of course the region has Ajit. You know, any targets that you've set for them in terms of where you would like this business to be, and the role that you see India playing for Snap globally?
We see enormous opportunity here. One of the things I'm most excited about is the way that Indian entrepreneurs are creating new augmented reality experiences. And so in addition to, of course, all the growth goals we have in terms of the application and growing the community, of course, growing revenue, I think India can really be a place that embraces augmented reality and helps build that future together with us. So that's something that I'm really excited about here.
Well, Evan, we look forward to seeing you back in India. We wish you the very best of luck with your plans here and globally. And it's been great speaking with you here on the Global Dialogue.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Well, with that, it is time for us to take a break here on the Global Dialogue, but we will return with more conversations. Till then, from all of us here on the team, goodbye and thanks for watching.